I sat at that kitchen table, watching my sister's wedding guests treat me like the family failure, while she celebrated in the ballroom of what she thought was just another fancy venue. Little did anyone know, I was sitting in my own $1 million property, and I was about to give them a wedding surprise they'd never forget. My name is Amber Moss, and for the past 5 years, my family has believed I'm the disappointment of the family, the one who couldn't get her life together. The one who disappeared after college and has been figuring things out ever since. What they don't know is that I've been building an empire. While my younger sister Bethany was following the traditional path, perfect grades, perfect boyfriend, perfect everything, I was the rebel. The one who questioned why we had to do things a certain way, why success had to look like everyone else's version of it. After graduation, I told my family I needed time to explore my options. What I really did was move 3 states away and pour every ounce of my energy into creating something extraordinary. Bethany, on the other hand, has always been my mother Molly's golden child. 25 years old, beautiful, compliant, and now married to Zachary Fletcher, a man whose last name opens doors and whose family tree is basically a who's who of old money. Zachary is 29, works in his father's investment firm, and has never had to wonder where his next meal was coming from. He's the kind of man who measures people by their bank accounts and social connections. My mother Molly is 52 and has spent the last decade telling anyone who'll listen about Bethany's accomplishments while making excuses for mine. She's traditional in the worst way, believing that a woman's worth is measured by the man she marries and the approval she receives from society. To her, Bethany hit the jackpot with Zachary, while I'm still playing the lottery with losing tickets. The irony is devastating when I think about it. For 5 years, I've been building Enchanted Estates, a luxury wedding venue company that caters to exactly the kind of people my family worships. I own 3 properties now, with Rosewood Gardens being my crown jewel, a stunning venue that books out 2 years in advance and commands premium prices. The wealthy families that Molly desperately wants to impress? They're my clients. They pay me handsomely to create their perfect days, but I've kept it all secret. Why? Because I wanted to see who my family really was when they thought I had nothing to offer. I wanted to know if their love was conditional on my success, if their respect depended on my bank account. The answer has been more painful than I ever imagined. Every family gathering has become an exercise in humiliation. Molly introduces Bethany as my daughter who married into the Fletcher family, and me as my other daughter who's still finding herself. Zachary makes subtle digs about my thrift store clothes and offers to help me network with people who might give me entry-level opportunities. Bethany, sweet as she tries to be, speaks to me like I'm a charity case who needs protection from the harsh realities of adult life. The wedding planning has been the worst part. Months of listening to them gush about the exclusive venue Zachary's family recommended, watching Molly beam with pride about the sophisticated guest list, and enduring Bethany's gentle suggestions that maybe I should dress up a little more than usual for such an important event. They have no idea that every detail they're praising, from the imported Italian marble in the foyer to the custom crystal chandeliers in the ballroom, was personally selected by me. They're celebrating in my house, looking down on me while I sit in the empire I built. But tonight that changes. Tonight they learn who I really am. Growing up as the Moss sisters was like living in a constant comparison contest that I never volunteered to enter. Bethany was born to be the perfect daughter, the one who colored inside the lines, literally and figuratively. She brought home straight A's, dated the quarterback, and never once made our parents wonder where they went wrong. I, on the other hand, was the question mark. While Bethany was perfecting her penmanship, I was taking apart radios to see how they worked. When she was joining Honor Society, I was starting an underground newspaper that got me suspended for asking uncomfortable questions about school funding. When she was prom queen, I was backpacking through Europe with money I'd saved from 3 part-time jobs. Different paths, different personalities, different dreams. Our mother Molly never knew how to handle having one conventional daughter and one revolutionary. She'd beam with pride when neighbors asked about Bethany's achievements, then quickly changed the subject when my name came up. It wasn't that she didn't love me, I knew she did. But love and understanding are two different things, and Molly never understood why I couldn't just be more like my sister. After college, I made the decision that changed everything. I announced I was taking time to figure out what I really wanted to do with my life. The disappointment in Molly's eyes was crushing, but I knew I needed to follow my own path. While Bethany moved back home and started dating Zachary, a relationship, Molly immediately began planning the wedding I packed my car and drove to North Carolina. I had a plan, even if I couldn't share it. I'd fallen in love with event planning during college, specifically weddings. There was something magical about creating a perfect day for people, about taking their dreams and making them reality. But I didn't want to work for someone else's company. I wanted to build something revolutionary, something that would change how people thought about weddings. For 5 years I lived on ramen noodles and determination. I started small, renting spaces and coordinating intimate weddings, slowly building a reputation for attention to detail and creative problem solving. Every dollar I made went back into the business. I studied successful venue owners, learned about hospitality management, and slowly saved enough to make my first property purchase. Meanwhile, my family thought I was drifting. When I'd come home for holidays, I'd let them believe I was working various jobs, catering here, event assistant there. It wasn't technically lying, those were things I'd done while building my business. But I never mentioned the business itself, never talked about the plans I was making or the dreams I was chasing. Bethany's engagement to Zachary 2 years ago sent Molly into overdrive. Suddenly, every conversation became about wedding planning, about how wonderful the Fletcher family was, about how lucky Bethany was to marry into such an established family. Zachary's parents owned real estate, had country club memberships, and moved in circles that impressed Molly beyond words. The irony was that by then, I was already successful enough to buy and sell half the people Molly was gushing about. Enchanted Estates had become profitable. I owned my first venue, and I was planning weddings for clients who paid more for one day than most people made in a year. But I stayed quiet, curious to see how deep the favoritism ran. The deeper it ran, the more it hurt. Every family dinner became an exercise in biting my tongue while listening to Zachary make condescending comments about people who lack direction, and Molly agree that some people just mature later than others. Bethany, caught between loyalty to her fiancé and love for her sister, would try to include me in conversations, but always with a protective, almost pitying tone. When they announced they'd booked Rosewood Gardens for the wedding, I nearly choked on my wine. My venue, my creation. They were planning to celebrate their perfect life in the place I'd built with my own hands, while treating me like the family disappointment. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor. The morning of Bethany's wedding arrived with the kind of perfect weather that makes venue owners smile and brides weep with relief. Rosewood Gardens looked absolutely stunning, which it should, considering I'd spent 18 months and $250,000 making sure every detail was flawless. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows I'd specifically chosen for this effect, casting romantic shadows across the imported marble floors. I arrived early, not as the venue owner, but as the sister who was expected to help with last-minute preparations. I'd deliberately chosen a simple dress from a consignment shop, nothing too fancy, because Molly had made it clear that I shouldn't try to upstage the bride or dress above my means. The irony of dressing down for my own venue wasn't lost on me. David, my venue coordinator, greeted me with the perfect balance of professional courtesy and secret acknowledgement. To everyone else, he was just doing his job. To me, he was my trusted employee who'd been briefed on the delicate family situation. We'd worked together for 2 years, and he knew exactly how to handle the complexity of this day. The first blow came during the morning preparations. I was helping Bethany with her dress when Molly approached with a seating chart in her hands and an apologetic expression that immediately put me on edge. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about dinner," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Bethany and I have been thinking, and we believe it might be better if you sat at the family table near the kitchen entrance." I felt my stomach drop. "Near the kitchen? Why?" Bethany looked uncomfortable but didn't contradict our mother. It's just that most of Zachary's family and friends are, well, they're very successful. Lawyers, doctors, business owners. We thought you might feel more comfortable somewhere, quieter. More comfortable? Or less visible? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Molly's face flushed. Amber, don't be dramatic. We're trying to look out for you. Some of these people can be judgmental about career situations. We don't want you to feel awkward. The truth hit me like a physical blow. They weren't protecting me from their guests' judgment, they were protecting themselves from the embarrassment of having an unsuccessful family member at the main tables. They were hiding me. The situation deteriorated throughout the afternoon. During photos, I noticed how Zachary positioned himself so that I was always on the edge of group shots, easily cropped out later. When his groomsmen arrived, he made a point of introducing them to Bethany's accomplished sister, while gesturing toward me with what can only be described as performative charity. Don't worry about tonight's bar tab, Amber, he announced loudly enough for his friends to hear. Family takes care of family. I know wedding expenses can be overwhelming for some people. His groomsmen chuckled appreciatively at his generosity, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Here I was, standing in my own venue, listening to this man offer to buy me drinks at my own bar. The worst moment came during cocktail hour. I was standing alone near my assigned table tucked behind a decorative screen that partially obscured the view of the main reception area when I overheard Zachary talking to his college friends. Thank God Bethany only has one sister, he was saying, his voice carrying that particular tone wealthy men use when they think they're being clever. And thankfully, she's not successful enough to overshadow the wedding. Can you imagine if we had some hotshot entrepreneur sister showing up? This way, Bethany gets to be the star without any family competition. His friends laughed, and I watched through the screen as they clinked their glasses in a toast to my supposed mediocrity. They were celebrating the fact that I wasn't accomplished enough to threaten Bethany's moment. Standing there, invisible behind a decorative barrier in my own venue, listening to my new brother-in-law mock my perceived failures while my family participated in my humiliation, something inside me finally snapped. 5 years of hiding, 5 years of protecting their feelings, 5 years of watching them treat me like a charity case while I built an empire they couldn't even imagine. The time for hiding was over. Standing behind that decorative screen, listening to Zachary and his friends laugh about my supposed failures, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger exactly, it was clarity. Crystal clear understanding that I had allowed this treatment to continue for far too long. I had hidden my success to protect their feelings, but what about my feelings? What about my dignity? I took a deep breath and looked around Rosewood Gardens with new eyes. Every single detail in this room existed because of my vision, my work, my investment. The hand-blown glass centerpieces I'd sourced from an artisan in Vermont. The custom lighting system I'd designed with an engineer from Atlanta. The sound system that cost more than Zachary's car. The imported wine selection that had taken me 6 months to curate. This wasn't just a venue, it was my masterpiece. And I was hiding in the corner of it like an unwelcome guest. I walked purposefully toward the main service area, where I knew David would be coordinating the evening's timeline. He spotted me immediately, and I could see in his expression that he recognized the shift in my demeanor. David, I need to make some changes to tonight's program, I said quietly, my voice steady with newfound resolve. Of course, Miss Moss, what do you need? I want the microphone during the reception, after the first dance, before dinner service. Can you arrange that? David raised an eyebrow but nodded professionally. Absolutely. Should I inform the DJ to announce you, or would you prefer to handle the transition yourself? I'll handle it. Also, I need you to call my assistant Riley and have her bring my portfolio briefcase. The black leather one from my office. She has keys to the venue office. Right away. Anything else? I paused, looking out at the reception area where guests were mingling, laughing, completely unaware that they were celebrating in a venue owned by the woman they'd been treating as the family failure. Yes. I want you to prepare the venue's full information packet, the one we give to potential clients. Include the pricing sheet, the awards we've won, and the features list. Have it ready for after my announcement. David's eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. Miss Moss, are you planning to? I'm planning to stop hiding who I am, I interrupted. My family thinks they know me, thinks they understand my life. Tonight, they learn the truth. As David hurried away to make arrangements, I took a moment to really observe the scene before me. Bethany looked radiant in her wedding dress, genuinely happy and beautiful. Molly was in her element, playing mother of the bride to an audience she desperately wanted to impress. Zachary was holding court with his groomsmen, probably telling more stories about his generosity toward his unfortunate sister-in-law. The guests were everything my family aspired to be: wealthy, connected, influential. What they didn't know was that half of them had probably heard of Enchanted Estates, had maybe even considered booking us for their own events. What they definitely didn't know was that the unsuccessful sister sitting behind the decorative screen was the reason their champagne was perfectly chilled, their flowers were arranged flawlessly, and their evening was going to be absolutely magical. My phone buzzed with a text from Riley. On my way with portfolio. Everything okay? I typed back, everything's about to be perfect. I spent the next hour watching my family's performance from my hidden corner. Molly introducing Bethany to important guests while carefully avoiding mention of where I was seated. Zachary making charming conversation about his new family while conveniently leaving out details about his sister-in-law. Bethany accepting congratulations on her choice of venue, blushing prettily when people complimented her excellent taste. When Riley arrived with my portfolio, I felt the last piece of my plan click into place. Inside that briefcase was 5 years of work, success, and proof that I was everything my family thought I wasn't. Business licenses, awards, client testimonials, financial statements, and photographs of every event I'd created, every dream I'd made reality. Tonight, the hiding stopped. Tonight, they would see me for the first time in years. The moment arrived after Bethany and Zachary's first dance. The song ended, the guests applauded, and David smoothly transitioned to the microphone exactly as we'd planned. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin dinner service, we have someone special who'd like to say a few words. Please welcome the bride's sister, Amber Moss. I walked from my hidden corner to the center of the dance floor, portfolio briefcase in hand, and accepted the microphone. The room fell into polite attention, probably expecting a typical maid of honor speech about childhood memories and sisterly love. Behind the decorative screen, I could see my empty chair at the family table tucked near the kitchen. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here to celebrate Bethany and Zachary's beautiful love story. I paused, looking around the room at the faces before me. Molly looked nervous. She probably expected me to embarrass myself with an emotional ramble. Zachary appeared mildly annoyed at the interruption. Bethany smiled encouragingly, though I could see confusion in her eyes about why I had the microphone at all. I have to admit, this evening has been particularly meaningful for me, watching my sister celebrate her perfect day in such a stunning location. When Bethany told me she'd chosen Rosewood Gardens for her wedding, I was absolutely thrilled. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Several guests nodded appreciatively at the venue's beauty. You see, Rosewood Gardens isn't just beautiful, it's personal, very personal. I opened my portfolio briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. Because 5 years ago, I founded Enchanted Estates, and Rosewood Gardens is my flagship venue. I designed every detail you see around you, from these custom crystal chandeliers to the imported marble beneath your feet. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on that expensive marble. I want to thank you all for celebrating here tonight, and I want to especially thank my sister for choosing to have her dream wedding at the venue I built from the ground up. Bethany, when you called our booking office asking about availability, I personally made sure you got our premium package at our family rate. I looked directly at my sister, whose face had gone completely white. Zachary stood frozen beside her, his champagne glass halfway to his lips. For those who might be wondering about credentials, Enchanted Estates has been featured in Southern Weddings magazine 3 times, won the Regional Venue Excellence Award for 2 consecutive years, and we're booked solid through 2027. Our client list includes some very familiar names. I glanced meaningfully at several of Zachary's family members, who were beginning to look uncomfortable as recognition dawned. The Pemberton wedding last spring? That was us. The Morrison anniversary celebration that made the society pages? Also us. The charity gala that raised $500,000 for children's cancer research? We designed and coordinated that event. I could see guests throughout the room beginning to murmur, pulling out phones, probably Googling Enchanted Estates on the spot. Several of Zachary's groomsmen were exchanging glances that clearly said, "Oh shit." Now I know some of you might be wondering why I haven't mentioned this before tonight. The truth is, I wanted to see how my family would treat me when they thought I was just the unsuccessful sister. When they believed I was the one who hadn't found her path yet or was still figuring things out. Molly's face had progressed from pale to bright red. She was gripping her champagne flute so tightly I worried it might shatter. And you know what I discovered? I learned that some people can only see your worth when it's measured in dollars and social status. Some people will seat you in the kitchen corner of your own venue because they're embarrassed by what they think you represent. The silence in the room was deafening. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. But here's the beautiful thing about truth: it always comes out eventually. So tonight, in my venue, surrounded by my work, I want to make a toast. I raised my own champagne flute. To Bethany and Zachary, may your marriage be built on the kind of honesty and respect that sees people for who they truly are, not who you assume them to be. The room erupted. The immediate aftermath of my revelation was like watching a social earthquake in real time. The silence that followed my toast lasted maybe 3 seconds before the room exploded into conversations, gasps, and the unmistakable sound of people rapidly reassessing everything they'd witnessed that evening. Bethany was the first to react, and not at all how I expected. Instead of anger or defensiveness, she burst into tears deep, body-shaking sobs that had nothing to do with embarrassment and everything to do with genuine remorse. She pushed through the crowd and threw her arms around me, still crying. "Amber, I'm so sorry," she whispered against my ear. "I'm so incredibly sorry." I was scared. I was terrified that, somehow, even on my wedding day, you'd find a way to be more successful than me. I thought I was protecting my moment, but I was horrible to you. The honesty in her voice broke something open in my chest. This was my little sister, the one I'd protected from bullies in middle school, the one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Somewhere along the way, we'd let comparison and family expectations poison what should have been unconditional love. "I never wanted to compete with you, Beth," I said, holding her tight. "I just wanted to be seen for who I really am." Zachary's reaction was entirely different and utterly predictable. The man who'd been offering to help me network suddenly materialized beside us, his whole demeanor transformed. "Amber, I had no idea. This is incredible. You've got to tell me about your business model. I've been looking for investment opportunities in the hospitality sector, and clearly you've identified a gap in the luxury market. That..." "Zachary." I cut him off with a look that could have frozen champagne. "Earlier tonight, you were explaining to your friends how grateful you were that I wasn't successful enough to overshadow Bethany. Your exact words were that, thankfully, I wasn't some hotshot entrepreneur. Now you want to talk business?" His face went through several shades of red before settling on a sickly pale. I didn't mean..." "You meant exactly what you said. And that tells me everything I need to know about your character." Molly's approach was the most complicated. She stood a few feet away, clearly struggling with a mixture of pride, embarrassment, and what I hoped was genuine regret. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Honey, I had no idea. All this time, I thought I was protecting you from disappointment, encouraging you to find stability. I never imagined you were building something like this. You never asked, Mom. In 5 years you never once asked what I was actually doing. You just assumed I was failing and treated me accordingly. The conversation that followed wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Molly admitted that she'd been so focused on traditional markers of success, marriage, conventional careers, social approval, that she'd completely missed the actual success happening right in front of her. She'd been so busy celebrating Bethany's engagement to a man with an impressive last name that she'd failed to see her other daughter building a business that impressed people who actually mattered in ways that truly counted. The rest of the evening transformed completely. Guests who had barely acknowledged me earlier suddenly wanted to discuss business, share their own event needs, and genuinely connect. Several of Zachary's family members approached to apologize for their earlier dismissiveness and to express genuine admiration for what I'd built. But the real victory wasn't in their changed attitudes, it was in the conversation I had with Bethany later that night, after the last guests had gone home. We sat on the venue's back terrace, finally talking honestly about the pressure we'd both felt to be perfect, the competition we'd never asked for, and the love that had gotten lost in the expectations. "I want to know everything," she said. "I want to know about your business, your dreams, your real life. I want to be the sister you deserve, not the one who hides you in kitchen corners." That's when I knew the truth had been worth revealing. Not for the shock value or the satisfaction of proving people wrong, but for the chance to build real relationships based on who we actually are, not who people think we should be. The venue had given me financial success, but that night gave me something more valuable. My family back, built on a foundation of honesty instead of assumptions. Some truths are worth the wait.